Hello, everyone. Robin here, and welcome to this episode of the podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I wanted to give you a heads up about the content we will be discussing. While Amanda's story is inspiring, I do want to offer a trigger warning. In this episode, we will be covering sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including suicide, domestic violence, mental illness, and death. And we understand that these subjects can be triggering or overwhelming for some of our listeners. If you feel that you may be affected by these discussions, we definitely encourage you to consider your emotional and mental and spiritual well-being before listening, and encourage you to skip this episode or take a break if needed. We were very inspired by how Amanda used Reiki to support her through these times and allowed it to guide her through her story and the events that took place in such a short time in her life. Remember, if someone you know or you is struggling with these issues, there are resources available to help. Please reach out to a trusted friend, family member, professional, or always know that help is available by calling or texting 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. Thank you so much for being a part of our community and taking care of yourself. Right. Hello, everybody. I'm here with Colleen.
Hello.
And today we are here with Amanda. You know what, Amanda? I usually ask for pronunciations before. Is it McCordic?
It's McCordic. Yeah.
McCordic. Great. So we are here today with Amanda McCordic, and her full bio will be in the description, but essentially she is a mother, a wife, a lawyer, entrepreneur, terminal cancer survivor, and a holy fire Karuna Reiki master. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you here, and met you through a mutual friend, Pam LeBlanc, Reiki from the farm. So we're excited to have you here. A few announcements from Reiki Lifestyle. We will be having an animal Reiki class July 27th and 28th for Animal Reiki 1 and 2, and July 29th through the 31st for Animal Reiki Master. And those will actually be at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So if the timing has been hard, if you're in a different time zone, it does start an hour earlier than normal. And then Colleen is teaching Reiki 1 and 2 and Reiki Master in August. So you can go to the Reiki Lifestyle calendar to find more information about our classes. And then also, we'll be in Sedona for the Reiki retreat over Labor Day weekend. So if you have any, I want to go to that, definitely go. Sedona's magical. The retreat center is magical, and definitely come say hi to us. So we would love to meet everybody and our listeners in person. We absolutely love that. Okay, well, Amanda, let's go ahead and get into your story, everything that you have to offer to this space. It's very inspiring. I do want to go ahead and offer a trigger warning that there will be talk of suicide in this podcast, because that is a part of Amanda's incredible story and how Reiki has guided her to where she is at this point and supported her through some of that. So, Amanda, if you want to just get started and let us know your story.
Thank you. So it's been an ambitious few years. Whenever I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed with kind of what's going on in my life, I kind of have this image of me, kind of planning this life out with the key members, and everyone saying, "Oh, that's too much," and me saying, "No, we can do it. So really, I guess I want to start in 2019. I was 36 years old. I live in New Brunswick, which is the little part of Canada, the backwoods of Canada. And on the outside looking in, I had everything. I was a successful lawyer. I have my own practice that's always been very successful. I was married to my first husband, Matt. We had been We were married in 2009, so we've been together quite a while, and we absolutely adored each other. He was a successful business owner. We had a nice house. We had 2 kids. We have 2 kids, a boy and a son and a daughter. Again, healthy, happy kids. We had nice cars, nice jewelry. We went on nice vacations, and everybody wanted to be us. What they didn't know was that my husband had serious addiction issues and serious mental health issues, which we ultimately would learn was schizophrenia that was undiagnosed and untreated. So in 2019, on the outside looking in, everybody wanted to be us, but they didn't know kind of what was going on behind closed doors. My husband had gotten so dangerous and unpredictable that me and the children were frequently leaving in the middle of the night with what was on kind of clothes on our back. It was a pretty dark and difficult time. We had actually left for several months in 2019, and he had started getting some help, so we had come back. So we had just reconciled in early December of 2019. Only a few days later, I was wandering through Toys R Us with my daughter, and my bra strap fell down. And I just slid my hand in to slide up, my cheap bra. And there underneath my hand, I felt just a hard tumor. And looking back, I wonder how it could have gotten that big without me noticing, but it was about the size of a large egg by that point. Thankfully, I was doing my nurse practitioner's divorce at the time, and so I had quick access to my doctor, and I was able to get in and get that process started. More miraculous than that was that about 8 weeks before that, I had gone to a psychic. My assistant, it was her birthday present. And so I took her to a psychic, Christy Flynn. And Christy Flynn was amazing. She instantly knew my personality. She knew what was going on. And she actually said that my husband's path wouldn't continue much longer with mine, that I could delay his departure, but I couldn't prevent it. And at the end of my hour session with her, she looked deep in my eyes and said, if you forget and ignore everything else I've said to you, it is imperative that you go and you find Pam Allen LeBlanc, who is a Reiki master not far from where you live. And you need to take her first available appointment. I don't care if you have to move things. I don't care what you have to do. You have to take her first available appointment, and you can't cancel it. Because I had a long history of canceling self-care. I have like $300 in massage credits, I'm sure, for stuff that I've canceled. So, but she was so intense in that moment that it really, I thought like, oh, I better do this. And so I went home and I found Pam, and I went online and I booked her next available session. I had a very limited understanding of what Reiki was. I knew the word and really nothing else, but she was so good at what she did, the psychic, that I thought, well, she knows this much about me. Why not try? So it turns out 12 hours after finding that tumor in Toys R Us, I actually had my first Reiki session. And talk about timing. Mm-hmm. And so prior to that, I was just in chronic stress mode, really, when I look back my whole life. I very much was a people pleaser. And some of that was ego. I was pretty convinced that I was stronger than everybody else and I could handle more than everyone else. So it only made sense for me to absorb their burdens and carry them like my own, because I was stronger and I was better at problem solving. And so, and of course, being a divorce lawyer fed into all that perfectly. I was paid well to shoulder other people's burdens and figure out the messes they found themselves in. So I had that first session, and it was a distance session. And I remember that I didn't know what it was going into it. I didn't know what to expect. But at the end, I realized that I had never known such peace. It was like a pause in the chaos around me that I had never experienced. And it was in that pause that I realized how heavy everything was. So yeah, cancer kind of kickstarted my spiritual journey. But if I'm honest, cancer in and of itself wasn't enough. So I had cancer. I was going through the mainstream kind of steps. The first doctor I met with said, "Yeah, it's there. It's probably a grade 2. It's nothing that can't be handled. Nothing we can't handle here." And
Amanda,
and I talked to him.
Amanda, what
Okay.
kind of cancer did you have? Sorry.
Well, I had breast cancer.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was actually misdiagnosed. So they knew I was breast cancer, but they thought it was grade 2, but it was actually grade 3. And of course, that dictates how quickly it spreads. So they thought it was something that was very treatable. I thought I'd be away from work for 6 months to a year. I really didn't change much in my lifestyle. I booked I went to the Bahamas. But really, like life, I still continued to do way too much. I still continued to really buffer everybody in my life from the natural consequences of their actions, to my detriment and their own too. But really, nothing really changed. I had the mastectomy in February of 2020. That's when we really started to realize that, oh, maybe there's something, maybe it's more serious than they thought. So from December until February, I went from 1 tumor to 7. And it had gotten into my chest wall. And once they biopsied it, they realized that it was in fact grade 3, which is the most aggressive on the scale. So April 2nd, my oncologist set me down and explained to me that my scans had shown that the cancer had moved into my bones. I was, about 2 weeks before my 37th birthday. And she explained to me that was considered terminal, that there was not medication that could fix me. She said that there was, 3 to 5 years was the average, but that some people go much faster. And I come to find out later that summer that she meant me. They only thought I would last 3 or 4 months because it was just so aggressive. So I was told that it would explode through my body, that it could be already in my brain. They didn't know, but that certainly would explode through all of my organs and everything. I asked if there was anything that I could do. My daughter was, especially, I really thought of my daughter at the time, and, she would have been 9. And it was very clear to me already that my husband wasn't well enough to look after her. And so originally my goal was, I need to live 10 years. I kind of thought if I live 10 years, she'll be 19. I didn't want to die in her, grade 12 year ruin prom and stuff. So I had it all planned out, right? Super planner that I am. It's like, okay, I'll live 10 years. She'll have a great grade 12 year. She'll take a gap year. I'll die in that gap year. She'll get over it. She'll go to university. See, like I had it all mapped out. And so I said to the doctor, okay, I need to live 10 years. And she said, Amanda, that's not possible. And I said, okay, well, what do I need? Like, what can I do? What's in my control? I said, like, should I exercise? And she said, only if it brings you joy. You can't see the full body, but I am clearly not a jogger. I'm clearly not an exerciser. Like I'm a sitter. I like eating. So, I said, well, no, I'm not going to exercise for joy. And I said, should I cut out sugar? She said, there's no point. Eat whatever you love. She said, you need to go home, write your will, shut your business, and find whatever joy you can in the days you have left. And I remember it was April 2nd, because I remember thinking that if it was April 1st, I would have thought it was a joke, because I really felt fine. And all of that was taking place during COVID, right as the world was in its bubbles. So I had to call my mom on the phone and tell her. I had to tell everybody on the phone. And I had to come home and tell my daughter. And we are incredibly close. And I remember the first thing, she let this scream out of her. And then she said, I have 2 parents and only one of them can look after me. And the one that can look after me is going to die. And I was like, yeah, that's where we're at, kid. And so she said, who's going to sleep with me? And I said, we will get you a dog. And she picked a mini wiener. And I said, any dog you want, we'll get you. And she said, I want a mini wiener. And I thought, where am I going to get a mini wiener? Because again, this is during COVID where everybody wants a dog. Well, the universe was looking after me. My nurse practitioner called that night to see how my daughter had taken the news, because we were friendly. And I said, oh my God, I promised her a mini wiener. Where am I going to get that? And she said, oh, my best friend is a mini wiener breeder. No problem. I have 3 of them. Anyway, we had one a couple of weeks later, Larson, who was just the, absolute love of my life. Yeah, so April 2nd, 2020, I was, told that I was going to die in no uncertain terms. I gave myself 48 hours to really feel sorry for myself. So I cried in the bathtub, my favorite place to cry. And then I get thinking about, okay, they tell me there's nothing I can do, but I don't believe that. Mm. And I booked a session with Pam, and after that first session, I had started having sessions every week, pretty much, unless she was teaching a class where I was in court. And, I said to Pam, I said, I know they tell me I'm going to die, but I just don't think it's true. I keep having this image I'm going to be hit by a bus when I'm 86. And, and Pam said, well, we'll see. Like, I don't really feel it either. And so we started working. And originally, again, it was the 10 years. I just wanted to live long enough to raise my daughter. Luckily, I had a friend who had beaten terminal cancer many years before. So he reached out and started sharing some of the wisdom of how he had healed, which included things like fasting. Reiki was also on his list. Rick Simpson oil, which is a cannabis oil that we make. So he started kind of giving me tips on how, and again, it was all about, I thought of it as almost like a pie chart. So maybe this one thing, maybe fasting only improves my chances by 10%. But if I add that in with cutting out carbs, and I add that in with taking a bunch of vitamins that we know are cancer stem cell killers, and I do Reiki, which I know puts me in a place to heal, and I let go of old emotions, and and I thought, like, even if each thing only does 10%, if you get enough of them, you're going to get there. And so that's really where I started. And I have to say again, the universe and the timing was just perfect. Though it was difficult because COVID was taking place and we couldn't surround ourselves with our loved ones like we normally would, it did give me space. Because if I had dealt with that in regular time, I know myself, I would have run around trying to manage everybody else's emotions around it. I would have put on a brave face because that's what I had done for years and years and years. And I would have thrown myself into work. I was raised with I was raised by a single mom. We had no money. Work ethic was really a huge part of my upbringing. And I knew that if something was going to need it done, I needed to do it for myself. So I would have hidden work. Absolutely. I would have hidden work till I died. But it was COVID in the courts for the only 8 weeks in the history of New Brunswick history where the courts were just closed. Nothing was happening. There was no work to hide in. I was really left with nothing but my emotions in my life. And I remember in the first 2 days when I was, ugly crying in the bathtub, a lot of it was anger at myself. Like, you're going to die and this is what you've done with your life. This is what you've accepted. The way you've been treated, the way you've allowed people to treat you. And I was so angry. And I made the decision that I was going to focus on whatever life I had left. And rather than focusing on dying, I was going to focus on living. And I was going to focus on building the life I always wanted and wasn't brave enough to do without the terminal cancer. And so I always talk about the terminal cancer card. It's kind of like a carte blanche. Nope, don't want to do that. I have terminal cancer. Nope, I'm sorry, I can't help you with your terrible file. I have terminal cancer. And so it was just this amazing get out of jail free card for me for all these kind of emotional traps that I had allowed myself to be in, all these toxic relationships I had allowed myself to be in. And it really gave me, I always say, like, terminal cancer was my crutch. It's what got me out of just a terrible life. And don't get me wrong, I'm thankful for the life I live because I've gotten so many lessons out of it. But I remember my mom called me about 3 months after the diagnosis, and she was it hit my mom really hard. And she asked me, would you rather live 50 years of the life you had or 2 years of your new life? And I said 2 years of my new life. I don't think I could have lasted another 50 years of my old life. So going back, so we're in April, I decide that I'm going to focus on living. That included making the decision, they had misdiagnosed me. I am a lawyer. There is a lawsuit there. And I said, no, I am not going to focus whatever time I have left on fighting that. I'm going to focus on living. And that focus on living and finding joy, joy was so, it's not that there was no joy in my life, but all the joy in my life was accidental. And it was kind of like, if joy in somebody else's life, I kind of leached off it here and there. But as far as putting my own joy, it wasn't even on my radar that I should seek out joy or that I should have joy. I was such a martyr. I ran around looking after everybody else. I was depressed. I was overwhelmed. I was my stress levels were just insane, both at work and home. My husband's mental health was deteriorating. Um, we worked really hard for other people not to know what was going on, but there was no question that it was getting worse, that he was getting more volatile. But terminal cancer gave me that card to say, no, I'm not dealing with that. You know, you you go look after your mental health. You go find another lawyer, go, whatever it was. And I started getting really into the Reiki. So I had been doing the Reiki once a week with Pam. In May of 2020, I did my level 1 and 2, started working with that energy. In the summer of 2020, I had radiation, a very strong form of radiation. And it completely wiped me out. So there were many days where just lifting my head, literally, I would drag my carcass from my bed to this hanging chair we have in our backyard, and in the shade, because I'm super white. I can't take the sun. So I would drag myself to the shade, and I would lay there, until the black flies got so bad that I would drag myself back to bed. And that kind of tiredness is something you can't describe unless you can't understand it until you've lived it. Like, I couldn't watch TV. I was too tired. I couldn't have a conversation. I couldn't do anything. But what I did do is Pam always recorded our sessions, our Reiki sessions. And so I would listen to those on repeat for 12 or 14 hours a day, over and over and over again. And at the time I was so angry because I am used to being I produce. I am a worker bee. And I, for my whole adult life, had tied my value to how much I could produce, how many problems I could solve. And all of a sudden I couldn't do any of that. All I could do was lay there and watch life pass me by. In hindsight, I now see that was such an incredibly powerful time for my soul growth. There was no distractions. I could not distract myself with other people's problems. I had my shadow work to do. And I decided that I was going to plow through as much of it as I could before I died. And so I started confronting things. One of the things that had happened in my adult life is that my husband had so many issues with his addictions and his mental health that I could hide in him. Nobody expected me to be working on myself. I was busy holding him together. And so it was really easy for me to hide in his problems. And I did. I masterfully, nobody was criticizing me for not working on myself. Everyone was praising me for holding him together. So I started really examining what was going on inside of me, and I started making moves to build the kind of life I wanted, which involved spending a lot of time in the forest, hiking a lot, and I started being very careful about what I put into my body. I started, just meditating all the time, several hours a day. And at the time it was so difficult, but now I look back and it was such a gift, just an absolute gift. 6 months later, it was almost 6 months to the day, I got my I did my Reiki masters. And for me, that's when the energy really became something that I could tangibly feel. I believed in it in level 1 and 2, but really the masters is where I really started to differentiate the different energies and really start to feel it. Meanwhile, my oncologists were starting to wonder why I wasn't dying. In late May, I had a doctor's appointment where the doctor said, we're afraid that you are full of false hope, and that you're not realistic about what's happening. Like, you're dying, and you're living with all this false hope. And I said, well, if I die the day you think I'm going to, if I die, in 3 months, like you think I'm going to, and I've lived every day with false hope, Isn't that better than living every day with despair? So even if you think it's false hope, I understand. My will is done. I've got everything organized, but I'm choosing to live with hope, even if it's false hope, because that's better than despair. So I was supposed to be getting sicker, and they kept saying, like, well, you must be sleeping a lot. And I was like, no, not really. And I remember that May I had gone for a hike, and my daughter had pitched a fit because her legs hurt. And I remember I put her on my back and I carried her. And I had cancer mets in my tailbone and in my ribs, and it made my bones kind of brittle, like very, like, I was supposed to. And I remember thinking, like, my oncologist would kill me if she saw me carting this kid up this hill right now. But I was so proud because I could do it. So yeah, so radiation kind of set me back physically, but not spiritually. I got my Reiki masters. I continued to build this life that I was really proud of. I started writing very openly about my journey, about death and mortality, and how to live when you think you're going to die. And so I did that on an open Facebook page called Amanda's Tango with Terminal Cancer. And I kind of chronicled it all there. And I really thought that I would write until I died. And I kind of thought it was, my daughter was too young to understand what was going on completely. And I thought it was something, really, it was for her to someday understand just how much I thought about her during those days. But then I didn't die, so it worked out great. But so I'm trying to think where we are now. So life, I was kind of building this beautiful life, and I was, my friends, one of my close friends who is now a Karuna Reiki master as well, Charlene, she kind of said to me, I couldn't figure out what was going on with you. You were supposed to be getting sick. Your life was supposed to be falling apart. And every time I saw you, you were getting brighter and brighter and happier and more jovial. And she said, like, you were just blooming under this terminal cancer diagnosis. And again, it's the cancer terminal. The terminal diagnosis gave me the path to be who I wanted to be. So while I was kind of climbing this mountain of personal fulfillment, I was watching my husband unravel, and his mental health was getting worse. He was trying to get help. It really wasn't working. And we had this very pivotal conversation in August of 2020. And we were talking about chemo. And I had made the decision that I wasn't going to take really aggressive chemo. They didn't have any hope for me in that kind of way. And I thought, it's just going to steal whatever joy I have. And so I said to him, I'm not doing the harsh chemo. If I'm going to die, I'm going to die. We're not dragging it out 3 years. I'm not putting you guys through that. And I don't want my kids to remember me like that. So I'm either going to live with vitality or I'm going to die. And I remember he cried and he said, I would never want you on this earth suffering. I hate the thought, he was very clear. He hated the thought of being here without me. But more than that, he hated the thought of me suffering. And I realized in that moment, it all crystallized that that's exactly what I was asking him to do. I knew his mental health. We didn't know what was wrong, but it was dramatic. He had destroyed our house from top to bottom 3 times within the previous 4 years. I knew that he was suffering. And I knew that we had tried different psychologists, different counselors, different medication. And I knew what I was asking as I held on so tightly to him, because he had talked about suicide for years. And I knew that I was holding on so tightly to him, and that I was asking him to stay and live in a life of pain because I didn't want to be without him. So that was in August, and I had that realization that he was prepared to let me go if that meant that I wasn't in pain, but I wasn't there yet. He continued to struggle. And more and more I started to tie that I couldn't save him. And I always thought I could. People say, like, oh, you can't change someone, you can't save them. And I think, like, well, they don't know me. They don't know how hard I'm prepared to work. They don't know everything I can do. Like, yeah, that may apply to most people, but I'm a man of McCordic. I can do anything. So in November, I had scans. They kept pushing off my scans because I was doing so well. In November, I had scans. And my first oncologist had said, yeah, they actually came back really good. it wasn't until January when I met with the rat oncologist that he came in, and I remember his whole face lit up. And he said, "Did anyone tell you about your scans?" And I said, "Yeah, I heard they were good." And he said, "Good does not cut it. Good is not enough. There is no cancer in you. We cannot find any cancer in you." And he put up the two scans. He said, "This is the scan in April. You'll see all the cancer. This is the scan now. It is white bone, which means it's new bone. It's healed." And since November of 2020, there has been no trace of cancer anywhere in my body. I'm not on cancer drugs anymore. I live a healthy, vibrant life. So that was January 2020. January 2021 when I found out just how good my scans had been from November, and it was wonderful. I had a double Bailey's and a Diet Coke to celebrate, and a cinnamon bun, because I had been on a pretty carb-free diet for a long time. And I remember my oncologist had said, well, this is great, but, at some point there's going to be some major stressor in your life, whether it's, a bad flu or something emotional in your life. And once you have that bad stressor, the cancer is going to come back and just rage through you. Like, this is what happens. And so I decided that I wasn't going to worry about it. I don't really think about cancer. I think about the life I'm living, again, focusing on what I have right here and right now, and I'm not worried. I know the cancer could come back. I don't think it's going to, but if it does, it does. I have a wonderful life. I'm thankful for it. And if it ends tomorrow, I'm super thankful for it. I don't want anyone else's life. I want this life. So, and that's how I decided to live. I remember coming home and telling my husband that. We cried. But that signaled a shift. And I finally said to him, I'm not going to guilt you into living anymore. I want you to heal the way I healed. I want you to attack this, whatever, we call it the darkness. I want you to attack this darkness the way we attacked my cancer. But you've got to want it. And so this is your life. You are a sovereign being. I am sovereign. I get to make decisions for me. You get to make decisions for you. And I will love you no matter what that decision is. So that was in January. In March, we had another blow up. And he had, it was progressively getting worse. And we were having more and more conversations about I didn't think I could stay cancer free with him. He had crossed lines that he had never crossed before, including getting physical with me. And so he had punched me, actually twice. He had punched me in an incident. And I remember when he landed the first punch, I let this weird laugh out of me. And for me, for years, I thought, well, I know he's emotionally manipulative, and I know he's emotionally abusive, and he's financially abusive, and he does all these things, but he doesn't hit me. And that was like a line in my head. Like, if he hits me, then I'll leave. And he hit me. And he punched me hard, right in the head. And I let this laugh out. And he looked at me. And I just, in this moment, I thought, all the years I feared the physical punch. And the emotional was so much worse than the physical punch. And I realized he had crossed that line. And I thought, if he crossed that line, there's no line that he won't cross. So we had started debating what we were going to do. And I had actually, there was a large incident that had kind of blown up. And my son, my sweet son, who's actually my stepson, but he's mine, I raised him. Matt was in another, spiral. It was just another explosion. And my son came running down the stairs and he said, "You're not going to hit her again." And then they had a physical fight, which my 19-year-old son quickly won because he's young and had rage on his side, I guess. But for me, that was it. It was one thing to lay hands on me, because again, I still had, like, we talk about these spiritual journeys, and yes, it started for me, but it's still a process, right? Like, it's not like you lay down all of those people pleasing, all of those martyr ways right away. It's a process. And so me and the kids left that night, and that was it was 8 days, over 8 days that kind of we stayed in a hotel while we tried to figure out what he was going to do. Um, Ultimately, we had very open conversations, and I had said to him, I don't think you want to die. I think you just don't want to live the way you're living. And so I had found a rehab that also had a mental health component. And he said, I think I'm tired and I think I just want to go. And he said, I'm actually not scared of dying. I'm just scared that the suicide itself will go wrong. And I should pause to say, because I don't want anyone to think that this was all done kind of without care. I had, when he had had suicidal ideation before, I had him committed against his will. And I had promised him that I would never do that again, because the conditions in which he were held were so inhumane. So he was held in a straitjacket in a room where the light didn't turn off. And I remember thinking that if he wasn't crazy before that, he certainly would after. And it actually gave him pretty severe PTSD from the hospital. And so we had made a promise that I would never go that route again. And in fact, the psychiatrist had said to me, why did you do that? And I said, well, he needs help. And he said, he'll never get help that way. He has to come here voluntarily if he really wants help. And so I had said to him, I will never do that again. You decide. And so he was talking openly about suicide. If I'm honest, I really didn't think that he would. I thought his will to live was so strong that he would never actually do it. So we had a long conversation the night before he died. We said everything that we could. Nothing was left unsaid. And he had kind of been following my spiritual journey a little bit. And he had kind of said, like, yeah, I don't really believe in it, but I'm glad it makes you feel better, right? And so I finally said, like, do you want to know what I believe? And so really for the first time ever, he said, yeah, I do. And so I told him everything about Reiki that I knew to that point, everything I believed about lives and past lives and future lives. And that was the last conversation we had. I said the plan was I was going to come the next morning, and I said, and if you're still alive, well, we had agreed that if he was alive, he would go to rehab, and I was going to drive him. The next morning, our schedule kind of got thrown off because both kids woke up with really strong stomach pain, and so they didn't go to school, and so that meant that I got to the house a lot sooner. When I got to the house, I remember I sat in the garage for a second and I did Reiki to ground myself. And I walked into the house and down, and I remember I stuck my head around to look in his recliner to see if he was there, because that's where he usually slept when I wasn't there. And it was empty, and I was so scared I was going to find him dead there, but he wasn't there. And so I thought, okay, we dodged another bullet. He's going to rehab. And I thought I kind of hustled my funds up the stairs, and I thought, like, okay, don't just start, talking to him about rehab. Just go in and love him. Just go be with him while he wakes up. And I opened the bedroom door, and he was sitting up in bed, and I thought, what is all the red stuff all over his face? And it was then that I realized that he had shot himself. And Matt for years had said that he was scared that if he shot himself that he wouldn't die. And I always thought, like, that doesn't really happen. That's a fluke. But that's what had happened. He was alive with a gunshot wound to the head. I don't remember leaving the room. The next memory I have is trying to get my hands to work. We have French doors that lead out to our backyard, and I remember leaning against that door trying to get my hands to work, and they just wouldn't work. And luckily, the last person I talked to was my best friend, who is a doctor, and so my knuckle hit to call her, and I had the presence of mind to ask her if I was on speakerphone. Of course, she was in the process of dropping her kids off at school, and I was like, you need to take me off. And so she headed there, the cops headed, and she called the cops, and it was a very weird thing, because I was so disconnected in that moment, but I still had this burning loyalty to Matt. And I knew that Matt didn't want to go to the hospital, that he wanted to die at home. And so I just kept saying, he wants to die at home. Please let him die at home. But obviously that couldn't happen. So they took him to the hospital. I dealt with the police. The police were very suspicious because I kept saying, like, please, I wasn't screaming, save him. I was saying, let him die in peace at his home. He wants to be at his home. So of course, the police were very suspicious of me. So I got put in the back of the police car. And I kept saying, like, I just need to go be with him. So eventually they let me go be with him, um, but the whole thing was such a gift, which I know it sounds insane. Because he wasn't dead, they did a scan of his brain to figure out what was going on. And I was sitting in a little room, and my best friend came with me, who was a doctor. And of course, we live in a very small area, so she knew all the doctors. She works in that hospital. And she said she was just there so people knew that my story was true. And so the neurologist came in, and he just said, "Did anyone ever talk to you about his schizophrenia?" And I remember saying, "Is that what it was?" And he said, "Yeah, his whole frontal lobe. He's got extensive damage to his frontal lobe." And after that, I've done a fair bit of research about schizophrenia, and that's exactly the reality that we lived in. He was brilliant, and he was charming, and he was engaging, but there were times where he was not himself. There was, I used to think if I was on fire and he had a hose in his hand, in that moment, he wouldn't put me out. And I was also pretty certain for most of our marriage that he would end up killing me. But I couldn't leave because he was sick. So he lived for about another 2.5 days. They asked me about organ donation. They asked me 3 times. The first 2 times I said no, not because I don't think it's a wonderful program, but because I said I can't imagine. Like, my husband was a chain smoker. He was certainly a functional alcoholic the duration of our relationship, and he dabbled in some hard drugs. And that sometimes it was more than dabbled. And I remember saying to the doctor, I can't imagine waiting 7 years for a set of lungs and then getting his lungs. Like, that's just not fair. But eventually they convinced me that people who were waiting for those lungs, they didn't always have a chance to get another set. And so I talked to my children, and I remember my son said that if somebody else's dad could be saved, we should do it. And so we consented to the organ donation, and that meant taking him to a different hospital away from us, which actually made me happy because I knew that he wouldn't want to die in that hospital because of his bad experiences there. So he went, and and just as I was about to walk into the funeral home to plan his funeral, we got a call from that hospital. When they had opened him up to do the transplant, to start transplanting or to prep him, they discovered that he was full of cancer. He had metastatic renal cancer, and it was everywhere. And so his days were numbered. And, it certainly, and I often wondered if it would have been better, if less traumatic for me and the kids if he had died from cancer. But I think with having my own terminal cancer diagnosis, I think that would have been terrible for my kids to watch, and I don't know how that would have impacted myself. In our last conversation me and Matt had, I had said to him, he was always known for being extra. Like, everything had to be over the top. Everything, he was bougie, and he was over the top. And I had said to him, if you go, you have to leave me so many signs that you're okay. Like, it needs to be Matt Wilson style ridiculous. And he promised, and he has more than fulfilled. So the day after he died, we started finding dimes everywhere. And we're a house, we tap everything. I haven't had cash in my pocket since, 1992 or something. We find dimes everywhere. And so that started almost immediately. He had blown stuff all over my black clothing in my closet so that I couldn't wear black to plan his funeral. I had the only thing that was fine was the white clothes, so I had to wear a white shirt. And I remember just feeling, I could always tell when Matt wasn't doing well, whether he was in the same room with me or whether he was across the world. I could tell when he wasn't doing well. And I just had this feeling that he was okay. And it was in some way I felt more connected to him, and at that time than I had in years. So that was in March of 2021. He committed suicide 3 days before the 1-year anniversary of of my terminal diagnosis.
So, Amanda, that's just obviously just an incredible story. And you've said multiple times that it has been obviously such the part of what led you to today, which is your creation of this Dragonfly Reiki marketplace. So do you want to kind of fill in some of that aspect of it? Because really that's an incredible process. If that was 2021 and it's 2024, that's only 3 years in between this. Life altering is not a appropriate word. I don't know if there are appropriate words for the story. But I kind of want to hear about that process and what Dragonfly Marketplace is too, if we can say that, because I've said it several times, but I don't know if we've ever said this.
So in the summer after Matt died, it kind of mirrored the summer before, where I really retreated into myself to heal. And during that time, I was spending hours and hours a day meditating in my own thoughts, in nature. I spent a lot of time in the woods. And a couple of things became apparent to me. One is that mentally I would not have survived without Reiki. And I realized early on that not everyone has this amazing miracle of having a psychic tell them exactly where to go and what to do. And I also realized that there was a lot of really dark times during all that time where I would have done more Reiki if it was readily available to me. So I had Pamela LeBlanc, who is amazing, who I will be thankful for the rest of my life. You know Pam? She is a very busy lady. And so, if I was having very regular sessions with her, but I couldn't say that if I thought, oh, I'm in a low point, I need one tomorrow. There wasn't that kind of availability. She's just too busy. And I continued to do classes. And one of the things I was continuously impressed by just the healing abilities of the people in those classes. Just really talented, powerful, beautiful light workers who often weren't sharing their talents because of logistical burdens associated with starting a Reiki practice, whether it was discomfort around accepting money, confusion over taxes, just the kind of business stuff was really creating hurdles for a lot of these practitioners to really shine. And also, if you have a family and a full-time job, it may be great for you to discover this, wonderful thing that you love doing. But the reality is you can't just quit your job. Most people, they have to start somewhere. And so I kept seeing all these logistical hurdles, that these new practitioners had. And I, of course, come from a pretty strong business background. I ran a law firm after I ran a business, air balancing business with my husband, my first husband. So I was very comfortable in business, how to navigate it all. So during that summer, really regularly, especially through my cards, I was getting the message of don't forget what you're special, like you have a special purpose. And at first I thought it was to stop being a lawyer and to do Reiki. And so I set up a beautiful Reiki room at my office, my law office. And in fact, I fully incorporated Reiki into my law practice, which is another story. But it didn't quite feel right. It then came to me that no, your job you're not here to give one-on-one sessions. You're here to set up a system for other people to share. And so it started kind of taking shape in my mind. And I have to say, it is far outside my wheelhouse, though. Like, I'm not technologically savvy. I mean, if you should, me setting up for this podcast prove that. I'm not someone, I'm now at an age where I look to younger people to help me with technology and, Anyway, so it's not that it was something that was, I often wondered to the universe, like, why me? I'm not the natural. Like, could you have given me some talents with this stuff? But I had started dating. My husband's parents called me and said, we just want to let you know that you are a really good wife to Matt. But life is for the living. And so when you're ready to date, we're ready for you to date. and we'll watch Amelia, and we want you to be happy. And they are just the most wonderful people. So I had started dating, and one of the dates I had gone on was with somebody who had a company. We were not compatible. We realized instantly that, we weren't compatible, but we liked each other and we wanted to work together. And he had a company that did exactly what I was dreaming up in my brain. And so I called him and said, I have this crazy idea, and I need you to tell me if this is a bad idea. And so I told him about it, and he said, let me go do some research. And he came back and he said, nobody's doing what you want to do. I think it's a great idea. You should go for it. And so that started. So what Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace is I had this image, this dream of an online marketplace. And when I was 16, I had gone to a marketplace in Guatemala. Actually, I was 18, sorry. When I was 18, I had gone to this marketplace in Guatemala. And it was a core memory imprinted in my brain. And so I thought, I want to create an online Reiki community where each practitioner can showcase who they are as an individual. And I think each of us walk the path we do in part to learn so we can help other people walk that path. So I know that each hard path that these Reiki practitioners have walked has value. And so I wanted to set up an online community where new practitioners could join, make their stall, if you will, their landing page, showcase their whatever it is that makes them them, whether it's pictures, meditations, writings, whatever that makes their light individually authentic to them. And I also wanted to make a place that was very easy for people who were curious about Reiki to quickly get it. So right now, if you want a Reiki session today, you can go on and there's, X amount of practitioners that are available today. If tomorrow morning you wake up and you're in a deep funk, you can look and see who's available for a session within an hour. I also thought about all the places, we're fairly rural here. And so a lot of people, I would run into people as I was telling them about my story. And they'd say, oh, there's no Reiki practitioners around me. I can't do that. And, I could give them Pam's name, but the reality was Pam was booked solid. And so it occurred to me that there was a disconnect between Reiki practitioners who wanted to share their light and their love and the healing of Reiki, and a growing number of people in the public that were curious about it and wondering about it. And I wanted to create an online community where those two people could come together and we could help remove some of the logistical barriers for practitioners to kind of break into creating their own practice. So that was where Dragonfly, that's where we started. It has been an exercise in patience. Mm-hmm. And I am such a type A personality that it's been very good for me. The universe has not cared about the timelines I have created in my head. In fact, 2 years ago, I went to Sedona, and it was supposed to be ready for that weekend. Mm. It was literally ready 3 weeks ago.
Did you go to the Reiki retreat? Is that what you went to?
Yeah, I was like, I booked the Reiki retreat in Sedona, and I was like, we planned for it to be ready to launch. Yeah. And I had my little bags with the symbol on it and everything, and my little books, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be ready. It was not ready. Mm. A year later, still not ready. And now, a year and a half later, it's finally ready. But I needed that time, quite frankly. I always kept saying, the message I always get is, Dragonfly will be ready when you're ready. Yeah. And I'm finally ready. So it's a wonderful platform that we've put a lot of thought into. It costs nothing to join, either as a practitioner or as what we call a seeker, a client. For speaking first for the practitioner side, you have to be a Reiki master from any lineage. So we do vet. It's free to join right now. How it works is we collect, when somebody books, we collect the money automatically, so you don't have to chase anybody for money. You don't have to ask for money. We do that. The individual practitioners set their rates, set their specialties. So we have a massive list of specialties, whether it's suicide. I tend to work a lot with people who have terminal cancer. That's my favorite people to work with. And suicide. I'm quite comfortable, but there's all in the site. You can see that if you want somebody who has dealt with suicide, you can go and pick suicide. You can pick you know, any kind of child loss, or any kind of challenging situation. You can search that way. You can search by areas, um, and you pick your schedule, and it's very so. Really, I tailored it for people who had full-time jobs already, or for people who wanted to stay home with their children and wanted to work while their kids were at work or were at school. So you can change it. If, maybe this Tuesday evening you can do it, but next Tuesday evening your kid has hockey. All of that is adjustable. You set your own hours. There's no minimums, no maximums for time slots. Um, and really, besides that, we wanted to create a really strong online community for new Reiki masters. So we have what's called the Healers Lounge. That is a place for Reiki masters to go in and ask questions, to be supported. So, for instance, I just had a session. I did a spirit release. The client was very upset and angry when they left. Has anyone else experienced this? What do I do? Because I realized that we have these wonderful classes, but then a lot of times we're kind of set off on our own. And sometimes, you're doing these things and you think like, oh, what was that? Like, so we have the Healers Lounge, and it's really there to help spread knowledge, to create debate, and just kind of support the healers as they go through it. We also have something called the community board. And again, if you think back to your markets, they always had the big community board where people would post, lost cat, barbecue, babysitting services. So we have a community board. And on that community board, any of the Reiki masters who are operational on the site can post for free their classes, their Reiki shares, different conferences, whatever the nature of things they're doing. And that again is the whole core purpose of Dragonfly is to spread the light, love, and healing of Reiki to wherever it needs to be and whoever wants it. And so further to that, that's what that community board is. There's also lots of meditations on there for people who are new to Reiki and are wondering what it's like. I always tell people, before I explain Reiki to you, try a session. Have a session, and I think it opens people's mind to be able to understand kind of what it actually is. So it's finally ready. There has been a million glitches, and I did discover why the universe picked me to do it. Because I'm so poorly tech, I don't even know how to say that. I have such poor tech skills. I kept saying I need to be able to do this effortlessly, because most Reiki ladies or most Reiki practitioners have the same skill set as I do. And I think if I was somebody who was naturally a techie, I don't think we would have gotten the same site, because this is a site that's so easy for anyone to use. That's the whole idea. So it had to be someone like me that really, it really needs to be very straightforward for it to work for me. So it's finally ready. We have a marketing campaign with a company that's going to start in a couple of weeks. We have 21 practitioners that are fully loaded and bookable today. We have about another 60 who are just a few clicks away from being ready. And we've been really lucky. So we have uptake. We have practitioners in Canada, US, UK, Romania, Australia, and Japan. We can add any country. The whole system is set up to work internationally. Another benefit of it is I often think about the shift workers of the world. If you're a nurse who is working weird shifts, you can harness the difference of the different time zones to find a Reiki session that works for you literally in the middle of the night. If you get home, put your kids on the bus at 7 a.m., you can roll right into a Reiki session before going to bed. And I also just think, for the first year and a half, I really just had Pam, which was, again, amazing. But after that, I started opening myself up to different Reiki practitioners. And I can really say that each one of those practitioners, whether I went once or 3 times or 5 times, I got something from each of them. And I think that's the benefit of something like Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace, is there is just a plethora of different experiences waiting there to be accessed at any time.
Is it only in person, or is it also distance sessions?
So it's both
So
distance
you
and
just
in
kind of
person.
answered that question by the time zone thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, and everybody gets to, so the individual practitioner gets to choose, right?
Yeah.
So whether they want to do 30-minute sessions, hour-long sessions, they pick what their specialties are, if they have any, and it's okay if they don't. But yeah, the individual, they set it up between them, so the practitioner decides if it's going to be done over Zoom, if it's going to be done over the phone, or if it's going to be done in person. And all
Okay.
of that is searchable, so you can search by, you can search in your area to figure out who's there.
Okay. Wow. We know what you mean about things not being done when you want them to be done. We've had a few of those things. We're in the middle of one right now.
Yeah, I just
type A personalities. It's going to be done. Nope. Years
well,
later.
I just kept thinking, like, like I can just put my attention there, and it's gonna, and then the universe would be like, no, that's not what's gonna happen. PayPal just is gonna stop working for 6 weeks, and nobody's gonna know why. And then one day it just started working, and I was like, okay, it's time. And I don't know that I mentioned, but so basically how it works is for the practitioner is we keep 20%. So if somebody, say it's an hour-long session and you charge $100, we keep 20%. We send the other $80 onto the practitioner. There's no hidden fees. You can activate, deactivate your account. So if if you're going to the lake for the summer and you don't want to work, you just block yourself out. It's very straightforward. Nobody is held there against their will. We collect the taxes. So in Canada, there's sales tax considerations. We look after all of that for the practitioner, so they don't have to worry about that. We have some resources as well to help the new practitioners really understand how they can make the most around taxes and stuff like that. If you're working out of your house, you can write off a portion of all of those bills. So really just putting as much money in the pockets. And I was raised by a single mom, which has, again, hugely shaped who I am. And so for me, when I started thinking about Dragonfly, I really saw it as a very good way to lift a lot of families, a lot of moms out of poverty. And I remain that, so we teach classes. So we have what we call the 2 seats. So in every class, there'll be two seats for either single moms or somebody in that community. And the idea is how it works is those 2 free seats, and they promise that when they start teaching, that they'll always have 2 free seats. And just idea of that's how change spreads at a grassroots level.
2 free what? I'm not hearing that last word.
2 free seats. So we have the 2 seats, we call it. So 2 seats. So every class that we do, there's 2 seats that we give to people.
Oh, okay. Now I get
and
it.
Then yeah, and so when they become
2 free, like almost like scholarships or
exactly, yeah. And so how they pay for it, the exchange of energy is it's go forward. So when they start teaching, they'll always have 2 seats for someone in the situations that they were in. And so it just starts growing that way. Because I do believe, before I had my own practice, I worked at legal aid for many years at the public defenders. And so I worked with very abused women who often had just the most incredible spirit and light within them. And I often think if I can get them trained as Reiki masters, it's a good hourly rate. And we can leverage, not getting the business side of it too much, but we can actually leverage the low Canadian dollar to help make, so what we charge here for a good rate, it's kind of a win on both sides because the Canadian dollar is lower. So we can help pull a lot of people out of poverty, and we can do it around a schedule when their kids are in school.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So then for the person who is wanting to start a business, you said that the practitioner can do they have a landing page, and is that relatively easy to design?
Yeah.
So such a great place to start, because so many people, that is a really big barrier to entry, is figuring out how to get a website going.
Yeah, so it's all self-prompted. It will tell you step by step what to do, and of course, if you have any issues, you can call us, and we'll literally walk you through what to do. But you can populate it with your YouTube videos if you have any. You can populate it with articles you've written. We encourage people to record a meditation so people can get a feel for them. You can do a write-up on who you are, what your experience are. And yeah, so it's all there. And then the other thing that's going to be happening now that it's finally ready is there's going to be two different kinds of marketing available. So there'll be what I call macro advertising for the whole platform, where people, we through Facebook, Instagram, various channels. But also what there will be is increasingly there will be micro advertising. So we'll create ads that they can then go and upload to their social media. Find me at the marketplace is kind of the catch line, right? Have generational trauma, we can help. Find me at the marketplace. Have religious trauma, we can help. Find me at the marketplace. And so there will be access to all that various marketing stuff that they can pull from, again, for free. It's just part of being on the platform. There is no, there's no monthly cost to be there. So if you start up and it takes you a bit to get going, it's not like you have carrying fees. We really wanted to do whatever we could to take away the hurdles for new practitioners and sharing their light. And I shouldn't say new practitioners. I often met ladies who have been doing it for 20 years and had never charged $1 because they just didn't want to get into the setting up a room and all of that, renting space. And so it really allows people to dip their toe in at whatever pace is right for their life. There's no competition. We're there to support each other. You're not going to get bombarded with, sales targets and all. It is, you do 2 sessions a month and you're happy with that, great. You do 40 sessions a week, great. Everybody decides what works for them. And I've really sought to put as few limits on it as possible because I trust this is the universe. This is something the universe wanted. So I'm trying to keep my stank off it as much as I can, to be perfectly honest. And we're excited to see where it goes. I just think the opportunity, again, I was sitting in bed one day and I felt a little down and I thought, I need Reiki. And I thought, then book a session. You literally have it. So it's an online platform. There's also an app. So there's a Dragonfly app that you can download. It is a far more slimmed down version, but literally I could book 20 different practitioners right now from my phone to have sessions in the next 48 hours.
So it is up. So you can go to Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace.me.
No, it's just dragonflyreiki.me.
.me. Okay.
Yeah. And and it's free to join. If you're a practitioner, you can also book sessions with other Reiki masters because, of course, practitioners need sessions too. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the exciting things to see is the various Reiki practitioners who have other modalities.
Yeah.
We have a gentleman who does a lot of forest bathing. He's just, and again, I'm so excited to see men kind of onboarding because I do think there's a real need for kind of, I think the feminine side has picked it up much faster than the man had. So it's exciting for me to see that. But, we have shamanism, we have, yoga. There's all these different modalities that, go so complementary to Reiki, and people can exhibit that on the page as well.
Fantastic. Colleen, did you have anything?
Well, I was just curious how you're getting the word out about Dragonfly Reiki Marketplace.
Oh, yeah. So every once in a while I'd wake up in the night and think oh, universe, if you could deliver me that marketing plan now, that would be fantastic. So a lot of it's been word of mouth. So I had gone on Pam's podcast. We had looked for what we called our Founding 50. And so originally I knew we had to start with practitioners and make sure that all worked really well for them. So we got our Founding 50. Of those, we actually ended up getting about 70 or 80 people. Of those, 21 have completely checked all the boxes and are ready. So first we were focused on getting the practitioners and making sure that was all set up. Now we're focused on kind of spreading the word. So a lot of that is going to be through the marketing campaign. There's a company here, actually the company that designed the whole platform that we've been working with for 3 years now. So they have developed a marketing strategy. It's one of the things that they do. So that will be going out through Facebook and Google and Instagram and all of that. So we're working on that now. And that's really about just, again, a lot of those ads around suffering from, do you feel disconnected? Are you suffering from religious trauma? Are you, all the ways that Reiki can help, and starting some marketing around that. I'm also going on podcasts, so like yours, which is why it's huge for us. We greatly appreciate it. And we've started kind of spreading the word that way. The first clients we got through Reiki, I have my Amanda's Tango with Terminal Cancer page, which isn't as active as it once was. I mean, at some point it's like, okay, I'm not dead and I don't really know what else to say. So now mostly I kind of post kind of check-ins and stuff, but I have a fairly large following there. And I created a write-up that you can actually find on my landing page. So I have a landing page on Dragonfly. I'm fully bookable. And the first client that ever booked me had found my write-up. I had given to her three people away. I have a write-up. It's called The Breakdown of Steps Taken to Heal, and it's everything I did to heal from cancer. And that article is on my landing page if anyone wants it. It's been viewed. Pam originally actually hosted it for me on her Reiki from the Farm website, and then once I was able to host it on Dragonfly, it's also on there. So it's literally a breakdown of every step that I took and kind of the science behind it and why I did what I did. And that's been accessed all over the world. I think the last time I checked, like over 30,000 times. So somebody had found that and Googled me and then found me on Dragonfly and went in and booked sessions. And so I started doing sessions with her partner who was terminal. So it's been very organic. And I wish I had a 12-point presentation on how it was all going to work. I don't. I'm trusting that the universe has brought me this far, that it's all going to align the way that it's supposed to, which again, so outside my type A personality, that I sometimes laugh at myself. And I think I'm super annoying for everybody else on the team, because I'm just like, it's going to be what it's supposed to be. The universe is going to provide. Nobody worry. It's fine. So it's great project management.
I think we all learned that lesson at some point. So
you can either fight it or go with it, right?
Our work with Pam, that, it took us 5 years to complete Animal Reiki. And the same thing, thinking, oh, we've got this. 6 months later, we're good. It's like, no, not yet. And then
I thought I had 10% left for like 3 years. I was like, how could this still be taking so long? Yeah. But yeah, so it's going to come and it's going to happen. So I run various businesses. Besides Dragonfly, I have a law firm, I have an air balancing firm, and then me and my husband, the second part of my story is I actually swore I'd never get married again, and then literally the night after that happened, met the love of my life, who, when I went to a medium, the medium, Matt, was very clear that he had sent me Brad, and I think that's true. So me and my new husband, we got married, started an elevator company, which is the most random thing ever. So I'm
like elevators,
elevators. Who would have guessed? Oh, yeah, okay. He's an elevator mechanic, and he was working for one of the big kind of multinationals, and they were just so cruel and heartless to their workers. I said, I can't watch someone I love be treated this way. So either you get a new job or we start an elevator company, and we chose elevator company. So we blended a family and started a bunch of businesses all in the same year and a half. So, but Dragonfly is different. In my other businesses, I've always been they're strategic, they're business. Dragonfly is different. Dragonfly was never about making me rich. It was about sharing the light, the healing, and the hope of Reiki to a wider market. So one of the things that I'd really like to see do when it becomes successful, it's part of the profits from Dragonfly will actually go to do really good peer review research. I know that's one of the goals of William Rand, is to get those peer review, and I understand how expensive they are. So that's, we really see Dragonfly as a conduit to so many things, really just to help spread the Reiki across the world, to use that money to enrich the Reiki practitioners, because abundance comes from Reiki, and then also use those proceeds to help, really spread the scientific. Because I think of it as it's kind of like a snowball rolling downhill, and it's already rolling. Don't get me wrong. Like Reiki is growing, Reiki is expanding. I'm exceedingly fortunate that the universe gave me this project to do, and I know it. Even though sometimes it feels like the snowball is trampling me, but like as that. So we would just want to help speed that up in any way we can, remove whatever barriers we can to practitioners, and really, we are in just a magical time, but also a very difficult time where people have lost a lot of trust in pharmaceuticals, in government, and so I think those peer review studies are really necessary for people to, it's one thing to say it makes me feel good, but to be able to say, here's the chart that shows shorter hospital stays, better recovery, better, so that's where one of my key goals with Dragonfly is to just really help legitimize it to some that are still skeptical. And I remember one of my favorite things, because I was very skeptical coming in, very, very skeptical. And I remember Pam said to me, oh, that's fine, Amanda. Be as skeptical as you want. It doesn't change anything. And I was raised in the Baptist church where I was often chastised for questioning. And in fact, they created a whole separate youth group for me because I asked too many questions that were causing problems for the other children in their faith. So for Pam to say, no, question as much as you want, be as skeptical as you want, that was really liberating for me. And I really embraced that. I think that's how I approach people who are skeptical about it. As we started advertising, of course, we're getting lots of trolls. Old me would have just been mortified. New me is like, oh, this is their life path. That's okay. I don't know what they're doing on their life path. Maybe that poor soul has to go through life without the benefit of Reiki. Poor him. It's none of my business. It's for him to it's for them to figure out. But I would like to see. I love that we can question. In fact, my daughter was even more skeptical when I started doing Reiki. She'd kill me for saying this, but I was telling her about it, and she was 9, and she said, Reiki sounds like a great way to separate a fool from their money. And then she just walked out. Now she gets Reiki every week. She's 13.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Well, Amanda, what a story that you have. And just, I can feel the energy of trust that you have and how that it's here in the Dragonfly Reiki, which is a result, but really, what a tremendous level of trust, that deep inner trust.
It's going to be okay. Yeah, it's all okay.
It's like you said earlier, you may feel one way, and that's something I've always thought about, you can have a state of being internally with a different feeling externally. And that's what I feel like, that word trust, like you have that internal deep trust. Even I'm sure if some days you were like, I don't know about this trust thing. Not feeling trusting.
I often think I was too ambitious in my life planning. But it's just, it's this deep trust. I know that the life I have now is such a gift. If it ends tomorrow, it ends tomorrow. I mean, I don't think it will, but if it does, I'm so thankful for the life that I lived that I couldn't even be mad about it. And I think the other thing is, my mother hates hearing this, but I know I will die with a glint in my eye of excitement to see what comes next. For me, a huge part of healing was getting over my fear of death. And I remember being scared of death from the time I was little, just like 6 years old, terrified of death. And so the first thing that really had to go was like, okay, you're dying. You can't be scared of it. And I'm not. I'm a little bit curious. I still have lots of things to do here, but, I will die with a little bit of excitement in my chest, waiting to see what comes next. And I think when we have that level of faith or comfort or trust, or I wouldn't even call it faith, it's knowing. It's more than faith, it's knowing. And I think, if I mess it all up, I'll go back and I'll make a new plan and I'll try it next lifetime. It's really, this whole, multiple lives has taken a lot of the pressure off me, if I'm honest.
And getting it right this life.
Right? I'm not going to get it all right this life. That's okay. I'll do a pretty deep review and then I'll loop around and try again.
Wow. Well, Amanda, we're going to have you back to find out the point and where we left off in your story, to skip forward to Dragonfly Marketplace, because it sounds like there's some good stuff in there too.
Oh, the best part, the happy part. Yeah.
The happy part, exactly. So, and then, with you kind of launching in the next little bit, we'll have you on after all of that and see how it's going and get updates and hear the rest of your story. So it's just been amazing to have you on.
Thank you so much. And I would make an ask of your listeners who have their Reiki, if they would add Dragonfly into their Reiki grid. I wish I had this, again, as I said, I wish I had a 12-point, presentation of how it's all going to unfold. I don't. So if your kind listeners could send Dragonfly Reiki for its highest good and the highest good of Reiki, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and talking about your whole business with this and idea with it, part of our goal and our platform is always to help Reiki become more mainstream in ways that really even children can grow up thinking, I could be a Reiki practitioner and support myself financially, and children can receive Reiki as part of their wellness routine. And so we are in such support of any of the directions that can help it do that. And like you say, the Center for Reiki Research, of course, has some of the Reiki research, and really helpful to be able to support them and Reiki research as you keep going. And so thank you so much for sharing your story. What an amazing path.
Thank you for listening.
Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
No, just thank you for listening, because I know it's kind of a mouthful. So thank you for your patience.
It's inspirational, actually.
Inspirational, yeah.
Thank you.
I had a few moments of tears.
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Okay. Well, to get a hold of Amanda and, of course, going to Dragonfly Marketplace, you can go to dragonflyreiki.me. We'll put all of this in the description, so you can just go and click there too. Her Facebook is dragonfly.reiki.marketplace. And then also her Facebook, she put the information for her Tango with Terminal Cancer page as well. So we will put that. That's too long of a profile thing, so we'll just put all the links in the chat or in the description. All right. Well, and from Colleen and I, thank you. You can find everything, of course, at reikilifestyle.com. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.